One of Barb's favorite activities since moving to the United States was watching television. She especially loved watching the commercials. "You really can buy anything here in America," she told her friends. One afternoon, she was watching television and saw a commercial that really grabbed her attention. It showed a cartoon woman tossing and turning. The woman in the commercial was unable to sleep because she was busy thinking about the day that had passed and worried about the day ahead. Barb wasn't quite sure what the commercial was advertising. Was it a bed? Was it a pillow? Was it just a public service announcement urging people to sleep more? Suddenly a voice on the television began speaking very quickly, listing side effects of the sleeping pill the commercial was advertising. One of the side effects was insomnia. Barb thought that seemed like an odd side effect for a sleeping pill. The next day, Barb happened to be in the local neighborhood pharmacy picking up a few things. She remembered the commercial she had seen the night before for the sleeping pills. She walked up and down the aisles looking for them. Since she saw it advertised on television, she thought she might try them. Sometimes she had a hard time sleeping. When she couldn't find the pills on her own, she walked over to the pharmacy counter and asked the pharmacist where she could find the pills. "Do you have a prescription?" the pharmacist asked. Barb explained that she didn't, but she saw the pills advertised on television and thought she would try them. "Those are not available over the counter," the pharmacist explained. Barb thought it was dumb for there to be a commercial for something she couldn't just go get at the store. She walked out of the pharmacy without buying anything. One of the first things Gustav wanted to do when he got to the United States was to see as much of it as he could. He would be flying into New York City's John F. Kennedy Airport. In New York, he planned to see the Empire State Building and the Statue of Liberty. Then he wanted to go to Philadelphia to see the Liberty Bell. Then he wanted to go to the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., where he hoped to see the White House, and maybe he would even see the president. He knew that getting to the 3 East Coast cities was pretty easy. He could take a train or bus. Gustav wasn't sure about how he would get to the other parts of the United States he wanted to see. For example, Gustav really wanted to see the Grand Canyon in Arizona. He also really wanted to go to Los Angeles to see where some of his favorite movie stars lived. Once in New York City, Gustav asked the hotel concierge if they could arrange some trips for him. The concierge was helpful and informed Gustav about the different Amtrak trains he could take to Philadelphia and Washington, D.C. "What about the Grand Canyon and Hollywood?" Gustav asked. "What about them?" the concierge asked, looking confused. "What about trips there?" Gustav asked. The concierge pulled out a map and showed Gustav how far Arizona and California are from New York. "A train there will take you about a week. A plane ride will take about 6 hours, the concierge explained. Gustav was disappointed. He had no idea that the United States was such a large country. He was determined to see as much of it as he could, though. He wondered how much it would cost to rent a camper and drive it across the U.S. Kim was a housekeeper for a family in Beverly Hills. One morning when she went to work, she found a note from her boss. The note asked her to go to the supermarket and pick up a few things. There was a list of things Kim was supposed to buy. The note surprised Kim. She had only been a housekeeper for a week and had never been asked to go shopping before. Kim didn't even know where the nearest grocery store was. She also didn't know how to drive. Thankfully, the note also told her that the boss's driver would take her to the market. There was also a $50 bill. Once at the market, Kim walked through looking for the items on her list. She was confused, though. The list read 1 pound of apples. Kim had purchased 1 kilogram of apples, but never a pound. In her country, they used the metric system. She wasn't sure if a pound was more or less than a kilogram. Kim decided to ask one of the grocery workers. The grocery worker was kind and explained that a pound was about half a kilogram. I wouldn't worry about it, though. Just use the scale, the grocery worker said. Kim went to the scale and was happy to see that the scales didn't use the metric system she was used to. Kim weighed a pound of apples and put it in the shopping cart. The next item on the list was a gallon of milk. Kim wasn't sure how much a gallon was. She was used to buying a liter of milk. There was also no way to weigh a liter of milk. She was glad that the milk containers were labeled. She just wished the U.S. used the metric system. John had been saving his allowance for 3 weeks so that he could buy a telescope he had seen advertised in the newspaper. According to the advertisement, the telescope cost $94.99. John also did some odd jobs around the neighborhood where he lived. He mowed the neighbor's lawn and took another neighbor's dog for a walk. Finally, he had $95. One Saturday, John walked to the store. He had brought with him the advertisement, which he had cut out from the newspaper. He asked a salesperson in the store where he could find the telescope advertised. He pulled out the newspaper ad and showed it to the salesperson to make sure they took him to the right one. The salesperson showed John where the telescopes were, and together they looked for the one he wanted. It was called the Vega 600. "I found it," John told the salesperson. The salesperson confirmed that the Vega 600 cost $94.99 and brought the box to the cash register so that John could pay for it. John was so excited, he felt like jumping up and down. He had worked so hard to get this. "That will be $104.01, the salesperson told John. "Did you advertise it as $94.99? John asked angrily. He thought the salesperson was trying to take advantage of him. "Yes, it is, but we have to add sales tax. It's the law. In California, the sales tax is 9.5%. The salesperson explained. "Why don't you just put the final price on advertisements and price tags then?" John asked. "Then everything seems more expensive, and people won't come into the store to buy," the salesperson explained. "Everything is more expensive," John said angrily, walking out of the store without the telescope. Maggie was meeting her friend Lisa at a French restaurant downtown for lunch. Lisa was visiting New York from Chile. They met in Chile over 10 years ago. That was the time when Maggie spent a semester abroad as part of her undergraduate studies. Lisa was a Chilean student who helped Maggie learn Spanish and how to play soccer. Even when Maggie came back to the United States, the two friends kept in touch with each other via Facebook and Skype. Maggie waved to Lisa from the table in the restaurant when she saw her Chilean friend walk in. Lisa looked the same, just a little older and a little fatter. "Tell me what is new with you," Maggie asked Lisa. Lisa explained that she worked for an airline and was in town on business. "I get to travel all the time now," Lisa told Maggie. "Oh, really?" Maggie replied. "Yes, really. And I can even sometimes get tickets for friends and family members at really low prices," Lisa continued. "Oh, really?" Maggie replied. Maggie was annoying Lisa. Lisa was beginning to feel like Maggie didn't believe what she was saying. "I can show you the memo from my job that explains it all if you don't believe me," Lisa said angrily. "Why wouldn't I believe you?" Maggie asked, looking confused. She thought it was great that Lisa had a job that took her all over the world and that even let her do it with friends and family. "Well, you keep saying, 'Oh, really,' like you are challenging what I'm saying," Lisa said. Maggie explained that when she said, "Oh, really," it just meant she found what Lisa was saying interesting and wanted her to elaborate. "Oh, really?" Lisa said before the two friends both burst out laughing. When William was transferred to a job in Texas, he was really worried about making friends. On his first day in the factory, though, everyone was really friendly. "You should join our softball league," his coworker Richard suggested. "That's a great idea, thanks, but I don't have a bat or a glove," William said to Richard. Richard jotted down on a piece of paper the name and address of a local sports supply shop nearby. "They will have everything you need," Richard said. On his day off, William went to the sports shop. Boy, Rich wasn't kidding, William said to himself. Not only did they have bats and gloves, but also equipment for all kinds of sports. The store also featured an extensive gun selection. "Those are toy guns?" William asked. The salesperson shook his head. "No, sir. These are all working weapons. I have some machetes and knives, too, if you want something more traditional," the salesperson explained. "No, I just came in for some softball equipment," William told the salesperson. "Well, you can take home any of these lovely rifles or guns along with your softball equipment today," the salesperson continued. "I don't need a license?" William asked. The salesperson shook his head. "There's no waiting period?" William asked. The salesperson shook his head again. "I don't have to take a safety course?" William asked. He couldn't believe it was so easy to buy a gun. "No, sir. It's cash and carry here," the salesperson said. "So I can show you a fine firearm today?" William shook his head. "No, but can I take a picture? My friends back in New York won't believe it's this easy to buy a gun here." "Sure, buddy," the salesperson said. "I'll even take a picture of you with any weapons you want." Mildred went to pick up her son Bill from school one afternoon. When she got to the school, Mildred noticed that Bill looked upset. He was pouting and did not want to look at her. "What's wrong?" she asked him. "I got in trouble," Bill said in a low voice. "What happened?" Mildred asked gently. "I got put in time out for grabbing a toy from Mary," Bill said. Mildred wasn't sure what a time out was. She knew that timeouts were called in sports whenever a player was injured, but she wasn't sure how that would be used in a kindergarten classroom. Mildred was sure, though, that her son grabbing a toy from a classmate was not correct. The next day, when Mildred took Bill to school, she stopped the teacher. She asked the teacher to explain what a timeout was. Mildred told the teacher that Bill was very upset about the timeout he had the day before. The teacher explained that timeout was a discipline tool she used in the classroom. When she saw Bill grab the toy from Mary, she told him to go into timeout. Timeout is a chair next to the teacher's desk where a student has to sit quietly when they do something wrong. They aren't kicked out of the classroom, just taken out of the immediate situation so they can reflect on what they did wrong, the teacher explained. Mildred thought it was an interesting way to teach self-control to little kids. "Can I use this at home?" Mildred asked the teacher. "Of course," the teacher said. Later that night, Mildred got into an argument with her husband for something. In the middle of the argument, she slammed her hand on the kitchen counter. "Mommy, you need a time-out," Bill said. When Julie left for school in the morning, she noticed. "You what?" Ken asked Elizabeth. He was sure he hadn't heard her correctly. Elizabeth had just moved in with Ken. She came to Los Angeles from New York City after a year of long-distance dating. "I want you to buy me a shopping cart," Elizabeth repeated. In Los Angeles, there are two types of people who use shopping carts. The homeless are one. They use shopping carts to carry their possessions. Old ladies are the second. They use it to carry their laundry back and forth, their groceries, and maybe even to sell tamales, Ken explained. Elizabeth felt insulted. "Are you saying I'm an old lady?" she asked. She then continued to explain that she didn't want to rely on Ken to drive her to the supermarket or the laundromat. Elizabeth didn't know how to drive, but she wanted to be self-sufficient. Besides, she continued, in New York City, everyone has a shopping cart, not just the homeless or old ladies. One afternoon, when Elizabeth came home from work, there was a red shopping cart in the driveway. Ken had put a big red bow on it. "Do you like your new wheels?" Ken asked Elizabeth. She felt happy now that she could handle some chores on her own. The next day, she loaded the shopping cart with dirty clothes and set off to walk the 3 blocks to the nearest laundromat. This was not as easy as she thought. The sidewalks were uneven and the cart often got stuck, causing dirty socks to leap out of the cart. Elizabeth had to stop several times to pick up stray clothes. Then nearly every house between her house and the laundromat had a big dog that barked at her. Elizabeth hated big scary dogs. Maria received a Facebook notification on her mobile phone which says, "You have a new message from Jimmy." Maria didn't know any Jimmy except an ex-boyfriend 10 years ago. Maria opened the message, and sure enough, it was from the man she dated a long time ago. "You should Google me and see what I've been up to," the message said. Maria thought the message was strange, but out of curiosity, she typed in Jimmy's full name in the Google search bar. She saw pictures of him and a number of articles. The articles were about him filing for divorce from his wife, who was a high school teacher in New York City. She had been accused of having an affair with one of her students. She had been fired and was facing criminal charges. She had a daughter with Jimmy, a successful attorney. "Is your mind blown?" Jimmy wrote in a separate Facebook message after a while. Maria didn't know if she should respond. Why was he reaching out to her after so many years? Did he want her to know he was divorced so they could date again? Maria decided to play along. "Yes, my mind is blown, and I hope things have settled down for you and your daughter," Maria typed. Jimmy didn't respond that night. Maria thought it would be the last time she heard from Jimmy. A week later, Maria received another Facebook notification. It was another message from Jimmy. "I was hoping that you would have time in your busy schedule to see me," the message read. Maria hesitated. When they stopped dating years ago, it was because Jimmy had written a cruel message to her. Should she give him another chance? Scott received a paintball gun and some paintballs from his mom on his 16th birthday. When his mom gave him the present, she told him that she would take him to a paintball range with some of his friends. The range was in an open field, and the company that owned the range provided safety equipment like padding and face masks. Getting hit by a paintball hurt and could cause serious injury. The paintball range was 20 miles away, and Scott had to wait till the weekend to try out his new equipment. He didn't want to wait that long. He wanted to play with his new toy now. When his mom was taking a nap, he texted a friend who lived down the block to meet him in front of his house. "I want to show you what I got for my birthday," Scott told his friend. He loaded up the paintball gun with the colored balls filled with brightly colored paint. He started shooting it at the trash cans that were on the curb. Just then, a police patrol car was driving down the street. Scott missed the trash cans and ended up shooting a paintball right at the police car. The police thought they were under attack. Scott knew he had done something wrong and ran inside the house with his friend. Soon a police helicopter was flying overhead, and Scott could hear police sirens approaching his house. The sounds of the helicopter and the sirens woke up Scott's mother. She looked out her window and saw a spotlight right on her house, and 3 police cars arrived. "What is going on?" she wondered aloud. She went to the living room and turned on the local news to see if there was any information about what was happening in her neighborhood. Bob knew that the house he just purchased was in a historically rough neighborhood. There was a history of gang violence, including shootings, in the neighborhood. That is probably why the house was so inexpensive. The previous owners of the house had it foreclosed. Then some house flippers bought the property for a very cheap price, renovated it, raised the sales price, and sold it. Bob thought the house was still a good bargain, though. After he moved in, Bob began to see that many of the renovations to the home were merely cosmetic. While the house flippers put in new stainless steel appliances in the kitchen, they hadn't upgraded the electrical work. This meant that every time Bob ran the dishwasher and the coffee machine, all the power in the house went out. Bob spent over $1,000 to have the house rewired. The new carpets that the house flippers installed was put over the original hardwood floors. Bob decided to rip out the ugly oatmeal-colored carpets and refinish the old floors. That was another $3,000. The house was an old stucco house that got very hot in the summer and cold in the winter. The house flippers installed some cheap windows. Bob hired a contractor to put in new double-pane storm windows and install ceiling fans. That was another few $1,000s. Bob wanted to make the house energy efficient, so he leased solar panels that were installed on the roof. This not only lowered his monthly electric bill, but added value to the home. Within 2 years, all the changes Bob made to the house totaled more than $20,000. In that time, the value of his home rose almost $100,000. Bob felt that he made a good investment. He knew when he sold the home that he would get more money than he paid. When Johnny was a kid, all he talked about was becoming a baseball star. Of course, he wasn't alone. Most young boys growing up in the United States want to become a Major League Baseball player at one time or another. He remembers watching his favorite players on TV when he was young, and how his father would take him to see the Giants play at Candlestick Park. Johnny recalls the old stadium and how big it seemed to him as a child. His dad took him onto the field one day when the team was having a photo day. Johnny couldn't believe how big the field was. All his favorite Giants were there taking pictures with fans. "Can I take a picture with Willie Mays, Dad?" Johnny asked gleefully. "Of course, Johnny. Let's get in line," said his dad. Willie Mays was one of the greatest baseball players to ever play the game, and he loved kids, too. That is why the line to take a picture with him was so long. Johnny didn't mind, though. He was in baseball heaven. The Giants played their arch-rival, the Los Angeles Dodgers, that day. There had always been a bit of bad blood between the two teams over the years. It started when both teams were based in New York. They were crosstown rivals at that time. After the teams moved to California in the late 50s, the rivalry continued. The Dodgers were always one of the better teams in the National League, and even though Johnny grew up a Giants fan, he really didn't hate the Dodgers. "I think the rivalry was blown up, to tell the truth," Johnny said years later. "Baseball fans are very fickle and stubborn, though, and some play the rivalry up as much as they can. No true Dodger or Giant fan would ever admit liking the other team in public, but Johnny suspects there is a mutual respect for each team in both cities." Last week, Chris went on her first deep-sea fishing trip off the coast of Catalina Island. She had always enjoyed fishing when she was a child, but had never gone fishing in the ocean. Her dad liked to fish very often. Her big brother Jack was never the outdoor type, so her dad took her out often. One of his favorite spots was Lake Isabella, which is about 2 hours from their home. She recalls how she and her dad would spend a long, leisurely day driving to the lake and then taking his small boat out on the water. It was quiet and peaceful for the most part. Those memories remain some of her most cherished moments of her life. Chris has a friend called Robert. On this day, Robert invited Chris to join him on his company's fishing trip. Robert said it wouldn't cost much, but it would be a lot of fun. He knew Chris enjoyed lake fishing and figured she would have a great time. "Okay," said Chris, and to the ocean they went. The first thing Chris noticed, however, was the motion. "Wow, this boat really rocks," Chris told Robert. "Don't worry about it. You'll get used to it," he said. The trip to the waters off Catalina Island took about an hour. Chris marveled at how quickly she lost sight of the mainland. It was a bit scary when she thought about how alone they were in this great ocean. Soon it was time to collect squid for bait. The small boat stopped in the water, and the crew turned the bright light into the ocean to attract the squid. Before long, thousands of squid rose to the surface and were collected for bait. After about an hour, Chris didn't feel the rocking motion anymore. They were ready to fish. Chris caught her first ocean trout. It was a beautiful day. Tina was very involved in her daughter's education. She made sure her daughter did her homework. She also volunteered at her school. She especially liked to help parents who did not speak English. Tina often would translate at parent-teacher conferences and meetings. She also translated some of the papers that the school sent home. Tina was a member of the Parent-Teacher Association. She went to every meeting and open forum. Tina was so active in her daughter's school that she was elected to be vice president of the Parent-Teacher Association. The principal of the school did not like Tina, though. She felt Tina was too involved. She didn't like how Tina insisted that there be translation at every meeting, and that every paper that went home be in different languages. The principal felt Tina was creating more work for her and for her staff. She thought Tina was a troublemaker. The way Tina looked didn't help her. She had many tattoos and often dyed her hair non-traditional colors like pink and green. One evening, after Tina's daughter received an award for her good grades, Tina went up to greet the principal. The principal responded coldly, "Congratulations." The principal then offered some advice to Tina's daughter. "When you grow up, don't become like your mother," the principal told the young girl. The little girl was confused. Tina was furious. How dare the principal speak to her that way? Tina may not have looked like all the other parents, but what she looked like shouldn't matter. Tina's daughter hugged her mother. "I don't care that you have green hair, Mommy," she said. "I care that you care about me and my school." Millie's sister Arlene had been battling breast cancer for 5 years. Then the doctor gave Arlene some bad news. The cancer had spread to her brain, and there was no treatment that would cure her. "I'll keep taking care of you," Millie told her sister. Millie and Arlene were both in their 50s, but Millie was 5 years older than Arlene. Arlene would always be Millie's little sister. Throughout Arlene's illness, Millie took care of things. Millie went with Arlene to all of her appointments. Millie went to all of Arlene's chemotherapy and radiation treatments. When Arlene lost her hair because of the chemo, Millie helped her pick a natural-looking wig. Arlene was appreciative, but also felt bad. Millie had a family of her own to take care of, and yet she spent most of her time taking care of Arlene. Arlene told Millie she wanted to be put in a hospice. Millie did not know what that was. Arlene's doctor gave the sisters some brochures. The brochures explained that hospice care would try to make Arlene as comfortable as possible by providing pain management. They also focused on the emotional health of patients and their families by providing counseling. Millie was reluctant to place Arlene in hospice. Millie felt like she was abandoning her baby sister. Arlene insisted, though. "It's about time someone else wait on me hand and foot," Arlene joked. Millie went with Arlene to check into the hospice. Not only did the staff take care of Arlene, they also had activities for Millie, a member of the family. The staff told Millie that she could even spend the night here when she wanted. They asked Arlene what some of her favorite foods were so their chef could make what she liked. Arlene felt comfortable in the hospice. Donald Walker always looked forward to summer. As he sat down in class, he thought about all the things he was going to do during his summer break. He even made a list. On the top of his list was swimming. Donald loved to go swimming. Even though he was excited to get a break, there was something or someone he was going to miss. Sarah Lee Parker was his classmate, but he rarely talked to her. Donald liked Sarah a lot. He knew he was going to miss her. The first day of summer had arrived. Donald woke up around noon. He hated waking up early for school, so he wanted to sleep late for the first day of summer. As soon as he woke up, he put on his swimming shorts, got a towel, kissed his mom goodbye, and ran to the park to go to the pool. As Donald jumped into the pool, his heart began to beat fast. The water was clear, but cold. One of Donald's favorite things to do at the pool was to go on the diving board. As soon as Donald stood on the edge of the diving board, he started jumping in order to get high enough to do a flip. He jumped once, then twice. When he was about to jump off again, he saw that Sarah was looking at him from the entrance of the pool. Donald got so nervous that he couldn't finish the flip, and he landed on his back. Everyone in the deep end of the pool started laughing. Donald felt embarrassed as he swam to the edge of the pool. But when he got there, he saw Sarah waiting for him. "Ouch, that had to hurt. You want to go swimming with me?" Sarah asked Donald. Donald said sure nervously, and started swimming with Sarah. Donald had never been happier and never been in that much pain. Betty Gonzalez likes going to the movies. She likes to wait until there are multiple movies she wants to see. She'll usually go early in the day in order to see at least 2 movies. Betty is proud that her record is seeing 4 movies in one day. She usually sneaks in snacks to eat at the movie theater. Betty doesn't care if no one wants to go with her. She'll go alone and have fun. It was Saturday morning. Betty saw that there were 3 movies she wanted to see showing at the theater. Betty got her purse and made herself 2 sandwiches, bought a soda, got her sweater, and went to the movies. After she had seen 2 of the movies, she bought a soda and was going to sneak into the next movie. As Betty walked up to the room where the movie was showing, she noticed that a man was checking for tickets. Betty began to get nervous. Betty didn't have a ticket, but she really wanted to see this movie. She did not like the other 2 movies. She knew she was going to like this one, because her favorite actor was in it. The man that was checking for tickets stopped Betty as she tried to pass him. He asked her for her ticket. Betty didn't know what to do. The man was speaking in English, so Betty decided to speak in Spanish. She told the man something in Spanish and then walked off while she was still talking. The man was confused, and he didn't know what to do. Betty looked like she was mad at the man, so he didn't want to do anything else to get her even angrier. He just let her go through. When Betty got to her seat, her heart was still beating fast. She started laughing. She took a sip of her soda and watched the movie in peace. Paul Young and Mark Allen were good friends. They both hated summer. Paul hated that it was always hot. Mark hated that the park by his house was always crowded. "I hate summer," Paul told Mark as they played video games in Mark's room. "I know. Besides not going to school, there is nothing else that's good about summer," Mark said. As the 2 friends played their game, Mark's mom started getting upset with the boys. "Why don't you boys go outside?" Mark's mom asked. Mark replied, "Too many people, and it's too hot." Mark's mom had enough. She unplugged the game and told Mark that they had to go outside and do something else. They decided to go to the arcade, because at least there they could play games and be inside an air-conditioned building. When they got there, they realized that 2 of their friends were at the arcade too. It was Susan and Carol. Paul liked Susan. Mark didn't really like Carol that much, but he agreed to stay with Carol so that Paul could hang out with Susan alone. "Don't do anything stupid, Mark," Paul said. "Oh, shut up and go talk to Susan," Mark said. Paul went up to Susan and asked if she wanted to play a shooting game with him. She said yes. After they played the game, they went back to meet with Carol and Mark. "You know, Carol and I were about to leave. You guys want to come with us?" Susan asked the boys. "Sure, where to?" Paul asked. Susan said that they were going to the park because she liked to see all the people having fun there. "Awesome. I love going to the park during the summer," Paul said. He looked at Mark and whispered, "Shut up, don't say anything." They all left, and Mark looked like he was going to cry. "I hate summer," Mark said to himself. Nancy Young had always loved celebrating the 4th of July, the holiday that celebrates America's independence. She loved the meaning of the day. She also loved lighting fireworks. She loved all types of fireworks. Nancy had 3 brothers, and they all loved 4th of July. Nancy's youngest brother, Peter, loved lighting up the fireworks. Although Nancy's parents didn't have that much money, they decided to buy a lot of fireworks for their children. They wanted their children to have a great 4th of July. Once they got the fireworks, Nancy decided to split them with her brothers. She got the most, and her brothers got the rest. Nancy's parents decided to go to the park to light the fireworks this year. Peter decided to light the first one. It exploded, and it scared Nancy. Nancy decided to light one. It was a sparkler, which meant that it would only send sparks up into the sky, and would not explode. Nancy loved how it looked. She lit another one to see how it would look like. Peter had the idea to jump over the fireworks. Even though Nancy said no, Peter decided to jump over it. Peter got ready. He tied his shoes to make sure his shoelaces weren't hanging out of his shoes, and that he had enough distance to jump over the sparks. Peter started running and then jumped. When he landed on the other side, he started screaming in pain. A spark had gotten into Peter's eye. He fell to the ground and started asking for ice. Nancy brought him a bag of ice to cover his eye. During the next day, Peter had to get glasses because of the damage he had suffered in his eye. The doctor asked him, "What's the important lesson here?" Peter responded with, "Don't jump over fireworks."